Imagine a T-Rex. It doesn't roar, it breathes heavily, exhaling the stench of decay. We are used to seeing dinosaurs as terrifying, invulnerable monsters, but what if the true horror wasn't the tyrannosaur's teeth, but a single drop of its saliva? The prehistoric world wasn't just cruel, it was unsterile and filthy. Paleopathology reveals a world where dinosaurs lived for years with rotting bones and parasites that literally turned their jaws into a sieve. Studies of fossils, such as the famous Sioux, show holes in the skull that were previously thought to be bite marks. In reality, these were the work of Trichomonas gallini, a protozoan parasite that affects modern-day pigeons. Yet dinosaurs exhibited phenomenal immunity. Their bodies functioned differently. The immune system didn't just fight the disease, it preserved it. Dinosaurs survived open fractures and sepsis that would have instantly killed any modern mammal. It was a world where it wasn't just the strongest who survived, but the one whose immunity could withstand bacteria. Just like the immune system of our first example. Meet Dolly, a young long-necked diplodocid whose story has completely reshaped our understanding of these giants' endurance. Over 150 million years ago, this sauropod roamed the lands of modern-day Montana, but instead of peacefully grazing on greenery, she was fighting for every breath. According to research, Dolly has become the first confirmed dinosaur in history to suffer from a common cold. Scientists discovered strange bony protrusions on her cervical vertebrae. These weren't the result of an injury. These anomalies appeared where the air sacs connected to the lungs. The diagnosis? A respiratory infection very similar to modern aspergillosis, a fungal infection of the respiratory tract. Imagine the scene, a multi-ton creature suffering from coughing fits, a high fever and agonizing shortness of breath. Her eyes would have watered, and every breath drawn through that long neck was accompanied by a wheeze. What is most impressive is her resilience. Bone analysis shows that Dolly did not die immediately. She fought the ailment for months, while the fungus literally ate its way from her lungs into her skeleton. This proves that dinosaurs possessed a highly complex respiratory system identical to that of birds and suffered from the same diseases. The illness eventually won, but months of resisting such an aggressive fungus testified to the incredible structural strength of ancient reptiles' bodies. As it turns out, a cold is just the tip of the iceberg, as some predators were being eaten by parasites from the inside out while they were still alive. Many famous T-Rex skulls, including the renowned Pex Rex specimen displayed at the Museum of the Rockies, feature a strange characteristic: perfectly round holes in the lower jaw. For a long time, scientists believed these were battle scars from the teeth of rivals, but paleopathology has revealed a much darker truth. The diagnosis for these giants is trichomoniasis. This is an infection caused by microscopic parasites, very similar to those that affect modern-day pigeons or hawks. What we see on the bones are not just holes. They are traces of aggressive tissue destruction. The horrific reality was that these parasites caused such severe throat inflammation that the tyrannosaur simply could not swallow. Imagine a 7-ton killing machine, slowly starving to death in front of a mountain of meat because its own jaw was dissolving under the influence of microbes. This case proves that even the planet's most powerful predator was utterly defenseless against a microscopic enemy. The infection was transmitted through bites during mating rituals or by consuming infected prey, turning every confrontation into a biological lottery. The next example suffered from something even more painful than parasites. Imagine a majestic Lufengosaurus that lived millions of years ago in what is now modern-day China. Its life was fraught with danger, and one such peril left a mark that scientists have only just decoded. On the rib of this giant, researchers discovered signs of chronic osteomyelitis, a severe infection that was literally eating the bone away from the inside. It all began with a failed encounter with a predator, whose sharp teeth pierced the rib's protective layer and introduced bacteria. Over time, a deep abscess formed at the site, a closed cavity filled with pus. Tomography revealed a gruesome picture. Canals and necrotic zones had formed within the bone. It was a hot, throbbing focal point of pain, acting like a chemical factory of toxins. Every time the dinosaur took a breath or moved, the inflammation irritated muscles and nerves, poisoning its entire system with decay products. Yet, the most remarkable part is that the animal did not perish immediately. A thick, bony callus grew around the wound, testifying to years of struggle. This demonstrates the incredible resilience of dinosaurs. Their bodies were capable of isolating a deadly infection, allowing the creature to migrate and forage even as its own bone turned into a source of poison. This case shows that the path to survival in the Mesozoic era was paved with chronic pain and extraordinary physiological effort. For a long time, there was a myth that cancer is a modern disease caused by environmental factors. However, the discovery of a Centrosaurus apertus, in Canada proves that malignant tumors existed as far back as 76 million years ago. When scientists from the Royal Ontario Museum examined the fibula of this horned giant, they were stunned. The diagnosis was definitive: terminal stage osteosarcoma. The bone was completely deformed by a massive tumor the size of an apple that had grown through the entire tissue. This was an aggressive cancer that had likely metastasized to other organs. For a solitary animal, such a condition would have meant a swift death at the jaws of a predator, as the Centrosaurus could no longer run fast or defend itself effectively. Yet, analysis showed that the dinosaur lived with this tumor for a very long time. It survived not because of its own strength, but because of the protection of the herd. Its peers surrounded the sick individual, creating a living shield against predators. This fundamentally changes our understanding of the Mesozoic law of the jungle. It turns out that even in that brutal world, there existed a form of social support that allowed terminally ill group members to remain safe. The ailments of old age existed for dinosaurs as well. Research into the skeletons of large theropods, most notably the famous T-Rex named Sue, as featured in National Geographic, has revealed signs of erosive arthritis and gout. These were not merely minor discomforts, but severe pathologies where joints literally fuse together, turning into a solid, immobile mass of bone. Gout occurs due to the accumulation of uric acid crystals in the joints. In dinosaurs, it arose from a specific metabolism and a diet extremely oversaturated with red meat. In this sense, a tyrannosaur was much like a medieval monarch. It consumed so much protein that it eventually led to horrific swelling and inflammation of the feet. Every step of a multi-hour hunt was accompanied by a piercing pain in joints that had long since lost their elasticity. Such findings make these prehistoric giants feel more alive and vulnerable in our eyes. They weren't the mechanical monsters of the movies. They were real biological beings who suffered from metabolic disorders and the infirmities of old age. This adds a layer of tragedy to their image, showing that nature is equally harsh to everyone, regardless of the size of their teeth. The next example didn't just have one ailment, it had many, all in a single place. The Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, was a river monster whose fin-like tail served as its primary engine in the water. However, studies of its remains reveal a grim side to this giant's life. On its caudal, tail vertebrae, scientists were struck by multiple infections that arose following severe mechanical damage, likely the result of clashes with crocodiles or other spinosaurs. Paleopathologists observed vertebrae literally eaten away by infection, which had fused into bizarre, twisted shapes. Imagine, the very organ your survival and ability to hunt depend on becomes a source of constant agony. Since the Spinosaurus's tail was in perpetual motion while swimming, every thrust must have inflicted hellish pain. But instead of succumbing to sepsis, the dinosaur's body attempted to isolate the affected areas. The regenerative capabilities of the Spinosaurus were closer to those of modern crocodiles. Its immune system was masterfully adept at sealing the infection inside the bone, preventing it from spreading throughout the entire body. It continued to swim, hunt, and dominate African rivers despite a mutilated skeleton. This demonstrates incredible biological plasticity. Dinosaurs didn't just endure pain. They literally rebuilt their anatomy on the fly to remain effective predators, even with festering wounds. Dinosaurs were never the perfect, invulnerable machines we see in the movies. In reality, they were living beings. They ran fevers from infections, suffered from agonizing joint swelling, and endured parasites for years that literally dissolved their jaws. Yet this is where the true magic of the Mesozoic lies. Their ability not just to survive, but to remain formidable predators or migrate thousands of kilometers while diseased, is far more impressive than their giant size. Studying these ancient ailments is more than just a curiosity for paleontologists. It is a key to understanding the evolution of immunity. Certain bacteria and types of tumors have existed for millions of years. By examining dinosaur bones, scientists find clues about how life fought back long before the dawn of medicine. This makes these ancient giants closer to us than we ever could have imagined. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. This was Sasha Paleo. See you in the next era.